Hey there, it's time for another tutorial, and this time it's going to be something actually really simple. We're gonna do this basically, motion planning tutorial. So I have a player object and a bunch of walls, and I can click and it moves towards the shortest path. And we're gonna use the built-in motion planning grid in GameMaker. So basically this is it. You can use this for strategy games or any like top-down game. Yeah, so this is hopefully going to be really simple, so let's start. So this is let's make a new one. So first we're going to obviously need two sprites. Sprite wall. It's just going to be a black square, 32 by 32. And we're also going to have player. So let's make the player a circle. There, and I'm going to center that sprite, so it's in the middle, and I'm going to keep this like that. Okay, we're also going to need objects for both of these. Object wall. And this is not going to have any code actually. It's just going to be like that. And object player. That's obviously the circle. And then we can go ahead and make a level. Let's make something interesting. I'm gonna like that. So let's do that. Let's also make this so I can show you something later. Okay, that's our room play. And then we're also going to have a controller object. And it's not going to have a sprite. It's going to keep track of like the grid and drawing debug stuff if you want to. So we've placed all of these objects now. This is a good start. So we want to make the motion planning grid now. So the grid works in a way that there's basically a bunch of squares, and we decide how big they're supposed to be. And then these squares are marked as either empty or filled. And if they're empty, you can go there, and if they're filled, you can't. It's a wall. So when we do the create, we make a global grid and mp grid create. So here's a bunch of parameters. So the left, we want this to fill the entire room, so the left one is going to be 0, which is leftmost of the room. And now this is where it gets, you need a little bit of math. So h cells is how many cells are we going to have in the horizontal direction. And since we want this to fill the entire room, we want room width divided by, and I'm going to use a constant that we haven't created yet called grid size. So this means if the room is 1000 and the grid size is 100, then we're going to have 10 grids cells. Makes sense, and I'm gonna create that constant really soon. And it's gonna be the same for height, but obviously room height. And then for cell width and cell height, we want the grid size. So you actually don't specify how wide the grid is directly. You just make where it starts, how many cells you have in the horizontal direction, how large those are, and then how many cells you have in the vertical directions, and then how large they are. So let's create that constant there, because the grid size is most likely not going to change in your game. So I use it as a constant. I put it as a constant like this. It looks nice. Now they're all colored in nicely. I'm not sure if yours is going to be the same color. I'm using a different coloring scheme for the code. Anyway, they're going to be colored and it looks nice like this. And I use big letters because it's a constant, so that's sort of a convention to use. So now we have this grid saved in the global grid. So what's next is once everything has been created, we want to mark all of the wall segments as filled. So since the create event, let's just so we have the room start event. In the room start event, we actually know that all the objects have been created, because that's the order of these two. So the first thing that happens is, I think, game start. If it's the first room, then game start event is run, and then the create event of all objects. So that means all objects exist. So then the room start event happens. So then we can do this with object wall mp grid add oh, we don't do with object wall, sorry. We do mp grid add instances. And so this wants the ID for the grid, global grid, that we saved. And the object we're adding is object wall and precision 1. I think this is if the wall object is like star shaped or something weird, then it might fill different it might fill cells that are actually only partly inside. Yeah, I don't use that much because usually it's just square. So anyway, now we've done mp grid add instances. Now let's see if we can see if we've created this correctly. So in the draw event of the controller, I'm gonna just make if keyboard check. We're gonna try and draw the grid now, and I'm just gonna, let's say we press the G key. If we're holding the G key, then mp grid draw, I think it's called, yes. Let's also make this depth of -50 so it's above everything. Let's run and see what happens. So here we can't do anything obviously right now. What I can do is press G and we get this nice grid. So this is the representation of the grid, the motion planning grid. So green are obviously we can walk there, and red are like walls. So that's good. Now that the grid is created correctly, we can make the player move. So in order to do this, we're gonna use paths that's built into GameMaker, but instead of actually making a path here, we're gonna create one dynamically. So the player is gonna have a variable called myPath that is equal to a path add, which creates a new empty path that isn't filled with anything. And then we go to the global right pressed, so new right click anywhere on the map. We are going to try and make a path using this built-in thing in GameMaker. And we can see MP grid path. So the ID of the grid it wants first, global.grid. And the path we're going to save this to is my path. X start is going to be the X position I am at, and Y position I'm at. And the X goal mouse underline X, mouse underline Y. So the position of the mouse cursor. And this allow diagonal. It means if you have this set to 1, it means you can walk from corner to corner in the grid, and otherwise you only move horizontal or vertical. So let's make it easy and just have it horizontal or vertical for now. Now what does this do actually? You go into the what is called manual, and you see it returns a boolean that is actually, it returns true if succeeded in finding a path, or false if it failed finding a path. So this means we need to make sure that we actually found a path from position from X start to X start and Y start to X goal and Y goal. So we make like this, bar success equals MP grid path. And if success is true, then path start my path, and for now let's just use speed 8 and action 0 absolute. Ooh, I think it's 1. I always forget this absolute thing. Whether the calling instance should follow the absolute path. It is in the editor or relative. Okay, I don't think that matters actually for when we have created this path dynamically like this. Okay. An end action, yeah, we can go in and read about that too. So the end action 0, you just end the path. 1, you continue from the start, and yeah, you can read about this in the manual here if you want something weird, like if you wanted to go back and forth, you can do that. So anyway, we do path start. If we succeeded in finding a path, then start walking. So yeah, let's try that. And I forgot something. No, I didn't forget something, I just misspelled my path. There's a big P there. And there we go. So now we can obviously find a path from everywhere to everywhere, except if I click here, there's no way I can get into this little corner here. So we can't find it. And also, if you notice, it follows the grid completely, but then at the last little, when I'm done, it actually moves to exactly my mouse position. So if this is not a problem for you, then this is all you need to know. But in case you want the player to stay on the grid, I would use some little bit of math just to fix this. So instead of moving to the mouse X and mouse Y position, we actually do mouse X div grid size. I'm going to explain this soon, and we're going to put this in parentheses, and then times grid size. So what does this do? Div. Sorry, this is then mouse X divided by grid size and then rounded down. So basically this is the same as mouse X as the floor mouse X and grid size. This is the same thing. I'm gonna keep the div because I like it. So all this means is you divide mouse X by grid size and round it down. And then I multiply it back up the grid size. So that means we're gonna create like the top left corner of each cell is gonna be the coordinates, and not the actual mouse X and mouse Y position. It's gonna be the top left corner of the cell that the mouse X and mouse Y is inside. So we can make the same for mouse Y. Div grid size, and then multiply that whole thing by grid size. So now we should have, or not. Oh yeah, of course. We have centered this sprite, so we don't want him to move to the top left corner, we want him to move to the center. So we actually do the same thing, and then we're just gonna have to add plus grid size divided by 2. And we're gonna do that for Y too. So now he's gonna stay in the center of all of the squares. So even if I press like all the way up here, he stays inside, on the inside of all of the walls. And also aligns well. I mean, obviously this is not what you want all the time. That's why I added it here at the last second. But yeah, this is really simple actually. So you can do this for a lot of units, but then you need to also check if you don't want them to stay at the same grid cell, then you need to some sort of way of checking that. But that's not part of this tutorial. So this is just getting your motion planning grids up and working. And I know a lot of people have problems with this. This was like magic to me when I first discovered it, so I hope you have the same feeling as I did. And yeah, so this has been a little bit shorter tutorial, easier. And if you have any ideas for more tutorials, I'll be happy to see if I can make them. I haven't done a lot of tutorials, and I feel like, yeah, I only wanna make tutorials where I feel really comfortable and I don't make mistakes. And also I really like to do them first myself before I actually show them in a video, so yeah, so I don't make silly mistakes there too. Yeah, I'm thinking about making one about shaders, like a really simple, maybe 2 or 3 parts, just to get the basics out, because I know they're really confusing. They were to me, and they still are a little bit, so we'll see how that goes. Anyway, I hope you like this, and yeah, subscribe, like if you want. Have a good day.